Wonderful. So, hey everyone, welcome to this session of Pioneer Webinars. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I really appreciate it. I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is Chelsea Risco, and I'm going to be your guys' host for this afternoon. A little history about me. I've been with Pioneer for 7 years, and I've currently in the role of e-learning specialist, which pretty much means that I create a lot of online learning opportunities for our team members. And now I've branched out to offering these webinars to our members and the communities we serve. So I want to thank you all who are joining me on these webinars. And, I appreciate that we're taking time together to learn. And I really hope you plan to join me again in the future. So for this afternoon's topic, we're focusing on supporting our high school students. So if you are a soon-to-be graduate and you're joining us today, a lot of the time I'm going to be talking right to you. Now, if you're a parent, though, your time is also going to be well spent because I'm hoping that you'll take some of this information and help out the graduates or soon-to-be graduates in your life. And remember, we will always send out the link to the recording, so you can feel free to share that with anyone that may benefit from it. So if you have high schoolers that are probably in school today, or maybe, I don't know when school ends for people. I don't know if we're to summertime yet, but definitely for those that may need it, make sure you share that link with them and they can watch it at any time that works for them. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. So during our time today, we're going to discuss the financial topics that really matter to students as they journey through high school and through college and even beyond that. So here's an outline of what to expect today. We're going to talk about your first job. So what will that first paycheck look like for you? We're going to talk about big decisions. Are you going to go to college, trade school? Are you going to get a full-time job? Those are big choices. We're going to talk about paying for college. The big question is, can it be done without going broke? We're going to talk about your college years. Can you afford to eat more than ramen noodles? Unless you really like ramen noodles, that's great. But usually that's a sign that you're kind of using I don't even know how much ramen noodles cost these days, maybe 25 cents a pack, but it's a cheap meal. So let's talk about how you can afford more than that during your college years. We're going to talk about entering the workforce. So you're going to have more income, but of course, with that comes more financial responsibility. And lastly, I want to talk about establishing credit. So how you can actually use credit as an asset to you and building your future. So when you're in high school, it is super exciting to think about the future. You think about having a full-time job and earning a real paycheck and the ultimate goal, having your own place and that freedom, right? So I want to know, what do you think? Do the money decisions that you make now really matter? So if you guys can locate your chat box, this is how you can talk to me throughout today's session. Do the money decisions you make now really matter? And I don't know how many people in here are high school students, but even if you're parents, you can chime in too. Okay, yes is the answer. Yes, definitely. Okay, yes. So we all agree, right? So while you're younger, you usually have more wiggle room to make mistakes. And if you spend all your money, you probably still have support from a family member. So that's really beneficial. And really, it's okay to make mistakes. In fact, I would argue that the lessons learned could serve as inspiration for the future. So talk about your first job. You've scoured the want ads, you've checked out Indeed.com, you've turned in multiple job applications, gone to several interviews, and finally you landed your first job. Congratulations. It can be pretty exciting to make money, make plans to spend that money, and having that financial independence from your parents. So let's take a look at some of the basics, like your paycheck. Your first 2 weeks are over and your boss has just handed you an envelope. And when you open it, you might be in for a shock. In your mind, you might have calculated, well, if I earn blank amount per hour and I worked 20 hours, well, then obviously my check should be blank amount times 20, right? But you look at it, for some reason, your check is for less than that. Now, before you go to your boss and complain, let's clear some things up. So the amount of money that you actually can cash your check for is called your net pay. This is your gross pay, which is that hourly rate times the hours you worked, minus any deductions. So a deduction is any money taken out of your paycheck to pay for employee benefits and taxes. There on the left, you'll see some taxes that can be subtracted from your gross pay include federal income tax, state income tax, Social Security and Medicare tax, often listed as FICA, and additional taxes such as city taxes, if that happens in the city you work in. Some common employment benefits, though, on the other side, these are things that directly benefit you right away. That'll be your health, your dental, your vision insurance. And some of you will be covered under your parents' plan, which is great, but you won't be able to be covered by them forever. So usually there's a cost to an employee to have these insurances, and you can talk to your HR department about that. You'll also possibly see disability insurance, and that provides income in the event that you become disabled while working. You'll also see retirement or a 401k on there, maybe even a pension plan. And you may be able to contribute money to your retirement plan that your employer sets up for you separately, but we'll talk more about that later. So once you take all those deductions into account, you'll see that your net pay may only be about 70 to 80% of your gross pay. So let's turn our attention to managing that 70 to 80% the best way that you can. So in order to know how much your paycheck can be deposited versus how much you can spend, it really helps to have some financial goals. And goals can be broken up into short-term and long-term. Let me explain. So short-term goals typically going to be achieved in about 3 to 12 months. So maybe it's having money for a concert that you want to go to at the end of summer, or maybe for a new tablet that you've been waiting for, a new phone. Then you look at your long-term goals, and there's something that may take you more than a year to accomplish. Maybe you want to save for a new car, or maybe you want to start helping pay for college. A savings account will make that a lot easier to reach your goals. So if you don't have a savings account yet, definitely consider opening one. If you are not yet an adult, you can have an adult go in to a credit union or Pioneer, if you so choose, to open that savings account. And then you can start depositing into there. And we're going to talk a little bit about checking as well here soon. So if you're going to try and set aside a certain amount per paycheck, consider creating a budget. It really helps. A budget is essentially money in versus money out. So you're going to see what's coming in. You'll get an idea of that total, and then you can look at what's going out and what are things that you need to pay for, things that you want to pay for. And some typical expenses are going to include those money for goals we just talked about, savings that you have, gas money, food money, your cell phone, entertainment, like going out with friends to movies or other events, clothing, personal care items, and maybe even charity or church and gifts. So keep in mind that the money in doesn't always have to strictly come from your job. I think a lot of people think that. You can also include any money you get from allowance, any other odd jobs you do, like mowing the yard or babysitting, or gifts from grandma. You know, she always writes that nice check on your birthday and your birthday card. But when you're creating your budget, make sure you get your parents' input as well. Some parents decide that once they have a child that is old enough to work, that child also needs to start paying for things. So just make sure, as always, communication is such an important part of this. And so make sure you talk to your parents and see if there's anything that they are expecting you to help with or to cover, maybe like your cell phone. So it's a good conversation to have. Make sure you do that. Okay, here's a question for you. Have you ever had a lot of cash one moment and then a few days later, or maybe even a few hours later, it just like disappears and you're like, where did that go? Can everyone raise their hand if they've ever experienced that? You can't see me, but I'm also raising my hand. Yes, okay. Everyone, great. Yeah, we've all experienced it, right? Thank you for raising your hands. Yeah, we have done that. And tracking what you spend your money on will help you decide if your spending is in line with your goals and your plan, or if maybe you need to adjust. And remember, if your income or expenses change, you do need to revise your budget. It's an ongoing check-in that you need to make sure you're doing. Some people like just using a simple notebook. Maybe they keep like a diary of sorts. And don't forget that there's a lot of technology out there too. I actually this week started using the app EveryDollar, and I was able to put in all of my expenses, all of my income, and honestly it really helped my husband and I to get back on track with our goals. There's something really powerful in being able to have a clear picture of what your finances look like, and it's never too early to really start getting that check-in and keeping up on it. It's a really great tool. It's free, so make sure you check out on your smartphone what apps are available. You can type in expense manager, and that should give you a dozen options or more. So let's go ahead and simplify it though. Let's just look at a simple Excel sheet that someone put together. In fact, our partners at GreenPath put this together. So this is for a student that makes $60 per month. Okay, not much, right? But it could be realistic to what you're experiencing too. So it's enough to pay for his cell phone bill and have $20 left over to go out with his friends. So let's say in the middle of the month, he has already spent $16 of his entertainment money. He now has $44 left total, right, in that account, if you will. But there's only 4 that's actually left for entertainment. So what if his friend asked him to join them, in going to the movies, which costs $12? What would you do and why? And again, this is in the chat. So put yourself back in that. You have 44 left total. So technically you could pay for the $12 to go to the movies, but your budget for entertainment is only $4. Are you going to spend that money? Are you going to say no, thank you? Are you going to rent a movie? Good suggestion. So what would you do and why? I think the why is important too. Two options: find a way to make more or find a cheaper option. Yeah, so I would agree with you guys. Hopefully he'd realize that this would be a bad idea to spend the $12, right? Because that's going to leave him short when it comes to paying his cell phone bill. And that's a harsh reality, right, that we need to face. And this is something you're going to face for your entire adult life, is making these choices. Of course, we want to go see a movie and hang out with our friends. But if we can't, because then that means not being able to pay our cell phone bill or other bills that are important, we really need to stop and slow down and make a better choice. And as you guys stated in the chat, there are other options, definitely. And here's the thing: every day you're going to encounter decisions on what to do with your money. So here's another one. Raise your hand if you've ever purchased something and regretted it later. Yeah. Most of us, all of us. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Me too. Me too. Does anyone want to be brave and share a time when they bought something that they regretted later? I have about 50,000 examples of my own. Anyone brave? Let me just give you a short list of things I've bought that I was like, why did I buy that? A fuzzy blanket that was $85. Pearls at a pearl show. We don't need to talk about how much that cost. Just really silly things that feed my ADHD. Let's see, a car when I was 21 that turned out to be a lemon. Oh, that is a big regret. Yes. Everything on the Home Shopping Network. That's dangerous. Okay, that's dangerous. They know what they're doing when they market that stuff on there. Thank you so much for sharing. So here's the reality check: spending impulsively can destroy a budget, even when it looks good on paper. You really need to think ahead of time on how you'll combat it. Maybe carry less cash with you when you go to the mall, or here's a big one: never buy an expensive item unless you sleep on it first. That one's a hard one because you really have to use some self-control, but man, when I do take the advice of that and sleep on it, there's many times that I even forget I ever wanted it. What are some other ideas you guys have on controlling the urge to splurge? Oh, going back to that last question, I purchased a movie I didn't really like once. Still not sure why. Maybe one day it'll come in handy. Maybe one day someone will come to your house and be like, that is my favorite movie. I cannot wait to watch it. And you're like, oh my gosh, I have it on DVD. I tried to sleep in the car. Does that count? Clever, clever. I don't know. Did it help you not buy a car in the future again? I'm sure you've had to. Anyone else have tools or things you do to control the urge to splurge? I hide my credit card from myself. Yep. 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 I've done that. Not carry my wallet. Smart. Can't pay for things you don't have a way to pay for it, right? Another thing I learned is I go onto the shopping sites that I know I love. Example, Amazon, and I will remove my card information from there, so it's not quite as quickly accessible. So I don't just make purchases. I have to like go and get my card and type it in and yada yada. And usually that's enough to tell me not to. I carry around a picture of goals on my phone to see what I want in the long run. Ooh, that's really smart. It's good to check in with what you really want in the future so you can make choices now. Great input, guys. Make wish lists and then go back in 30 days to see if I still want the things. Yes, those are all great, great tools. And I hope those of you who might need a little assistance in this area of life feel a little bit more prepared with some tools in your tool belt. All right, so the daily decisions you make about where to spend your money may seem insignificant compared to a very large decision on your horizon, which is what to do after high school. So you can either enter the workforce full time, maybe go to a 2-year community college, maybe you're thinking of attending a trade school, or going to a 4-year college. So I don't know because of names if we have high school students or graduates on the call, but if I do, will you guys let me know in the chat what your plans are? Do any of you guys have plans for what you're going to do? I am still deciding. Yeah, okay, that's valid. That's valid. I'm going to be honest. It took me a while to decide. Also, maybe you're taking a skip year. Is that what they call it? A skip year? Or you just take the year off to figure out your life and then go plan on going to college the year after you graduate? I must not have very many high schoolers on the call today. That's okay. Again, the thing is just making sure that you think through your options. So for those of you that may not be heading to school right now, it's still nice to know about your options in case you do decide to attend at some point in the future. So planning for college is not a one-time event. It can be a really long process, but I will tell you, the sooner you start and you plan ahead, the better. So there's many choices that impact college costs. So you have your in-state schools, which can be much more affordable than those out-of-state schools. There can be a large difference between resident and non-resident tuition at some public colleges. There's living off campus. That's usually less expensive than living on campus in the dorms. But make sure you know the rules of that too. If you attend a community college for 2 years, tuition can be cut very significantly, while the college experience at a 4-year college is something to consider. So, there's lots of choices here and there's lots of things to factor in. But remember, you're going to have to pay back student loans potentially based on what you choose and how much it costs you. So speaking of, let's talk about how exactly you can pay for college. So if you haven't already, you're going to want to talk with your family about how you're going to pay for college. Make sure you ask, do your parents or your family already have a college fund set up for you? If so, how much is in there? Are there any rules to the money? Like example, some plans require you to go to school in state, while others allow you to use the money to pay for off-campus housing. So just get those specifics. Next, you can apply for scholarships, and scholarships are funds that are awarded by a school, an organization, church, etc., to help you pay for some or all of your school expenses. So scholarships are often awarded based on academic merit, but also can be for other things like community service or sports. And this money does not have to be paid back, which makes it obviously something you really want to pursue, right? Grants are similar to scholarships in that they don't have to be paid back, but they are given out based on financial need. They're usually awarded by your state or federal government, and some schools also give out grants. So again, something you want to research. Now, if you're not able to cover all of your college costs with the options we've considered here, then you may have to take out student loans. Student loans are loans borrowed specifically for education expenses, and the loans must be paid back with interest. Loans can come from the federal government or from private lenders. So if you're among the 70% of students who opt to take out student loans, which means there's a lot of us, right? The loan choices can seem really overwhelming. So I want to spend some time reviewing the features of the different loan programs. So before we start any of this, you need to look into FAFSA. So to get any type of grant or student loan, you need to fill out the free application for federal student aid on or after October 1st. And to fill that out, you go to www.fafsa.ed.gov. And I say this because make sure you're always using websites that end in gov. Don't go to any other ones because they could be scams, okay? So Once you've sent in your FAFSA, it's been processed, you're going to receive a student aid report, or they call it an SAR. And this data is used to determine how much your parents are expected to contribute. Then they calculate the need as the difference between the expected contribution and the cost of the college you're considering. And this number is critical because it is used to determine your eligibility for many grants and scholarships, loans, and other financial aids. So it is important to do this. Once the FAFSA has been sent to your school that you apply to, their financial aid office determines what type of aid package they can put together for you. So first step, make sure you fill this out because it's going to really dictate a lot of things that happen after this. Okay, going into loans. So we have subsidized loans, and they're for students who meet a financial needs test. The government's going to pay all interest on the amount borrowed while you're in school. Then we have unsubsidized loans, and they're for students who do not meet a financial needs test or who need to supplement those subsidized loans. Interest will accrue while you're in school. And then we have one for parents. So a Parents Plus loan is taken out by your parents or your guardians. So a credit-worthy adult may borrow up to the total cost of college attendance minus any other aid you receive. And this program is available to parents at all income levels, regardless of need. Now, lastly, this one's black because it's bad. Maybe not bad, but it's not your first choice. There's private student loans, and these are originated by private lenders, and they do not include the benefits or the protections available with federal loans. You're going to have interest rates, fees, repayment terms, and benefits are going to be determined by the financial institution, and they may vary greatly from one to the other. So because of this, you really should exhaust all federal student loan options before applying for private loans. Okay. So let's go ahead and move on now. Let's go to the fun part, right? Now that your loan options are clear, let's fast forward a little bit. You've picked your school, you found your way to pay for it, and now you are on campus. Congratulations. If your parents are helping you with some of your monthly expenses, make sure you find out how much they're going to contribute. And if your parents are not able to help you financially, you have some options, okay? You might be able to get grant or scholarship awards that help pay for those expenses. Maybe, and maybe you don't want to, but I'm just saying you might have to get a part-time job, right? But if you do opt for that part-time job, please make sure not to overdo it, especially if you're taking a full load of classes, okay? Be gentle with yourself, reach the goals, do your budget, which brings me to, guess what we need to do again? Your budget. So wherever your income comes from, that's a fun sentence, you will continue to have many spending choices ahead of you. And you're going to want to create the budget just like we did while you were in high school to determine how much you can spend and where your money is going. You may have some new expenses now, like food outside your meal plan, or books, or your school supplies. Do you guys even know how much pencils cost these days? Just kidding. I actually don't know. I'm just trying to get your attention. So as you budget, having a checking account will make things easier to manage, like your bills. It's going to allow you to not have to carry as much cash, which can be kind of, questionable. And if you haven't opened a checking account yet, it may be a great time to consider it. Most banks and credit unions have free online banking apps and mobile alerts to help you. So like for us, we have alerts that if your account goes below, say, $30, you'll get a text and it'll say, wee woo, your account is low. Okay, it doesn't say wee woo, but you get the point. It's just something that can help you, right? It can help you keep track of that a lot easier, and it's going to help you establish a relationship with your financial institution. In the chat, someone said, I have had one textbook cost about $400. Blech. That sounds terrible. Do you know what else you could do with $400? So many other things, but a book, right? It is costly. Thank you for sharing that, because that's a reality is how much these things are going to cost, like books. All right, let's go ahead and fast forward again. You are now ready to enter the workforce. You have graduated. Congratulations. Welcome to living on your own. So this can be an exciting time for sure. Finding a full-time job and moving out on your own are things that you've dreamt about since high school, right? However, this can be a pretty tricky time financially. There's a lot of adjustments happening. It can be tempting to move out on your own once you've started this full-time job, but a few words of caution. Be sure to map out all of your expenses before signing a rental agreement. I know it seems super cool to have your own space, and we'll get you there, but let's be sure to take a realistic check on where you're at and what your expenses are going to be. And here's some expenses to consider. Of course, the rent, right? And especially right now, I know rent is extra high. Okay. You have utilities that go along with the place you rent. You have furniture that you may need to purchase because those apartments usually don't come with furniture. You're going to have transportation expenses, like maybe you have a car payment, maybe you need to pay for public transit. Maybe that car you have needs gas. It does. And that's also high in price right now. You're going to have insurance as well. Okay. Then going down to your necessities, you're going to need groceries, you're going to need clothing, you're going to want to have fun, right? So you're going to need to pay for entertainment. And then if you did take out a student loan, you're going to have to make those payments now that you're out of college. Okay. It's important to think about all of your expenses now, as you'll likely not be able to rely on mom and dad anymore. Consider if getting a roommate or two could help offset the expenses, maybe. And you're not going to want to hear this, guys, but you may want to see if your parents might let you live with them at home for a little longer while you save up. Okay, I know. No one wants to live at home. Mom and dad are annoying, right? No, they're angels, okay? Because listen, living with your folks will not be forever. And it really can help start you in your post-college life on the right foot financially. So, as much as that makes you cringe, see if you can offset that with the great benefits that come from living with your family, okay? So let's go on to talk about these expenses. One of the largest expenses you may have now is your student loans. So let's figure out how to best manage them. So when you graduate or when you withdraw from school, hopefully graduate, you have a grace period before your loan payments start. So those subsidized and unsubsidized loans that we talked about, they have a 6-month grace period. Now, once that grace period ends, we encourage you to choose the option that makes the most sense in your budget and long-term goals. So let's review some of your repayment options. First, we have the standard repayment plan. This will be in effect unless you request otherwise. So this is automatic. And this plan is usually set up to pay off the debt over a 10-year period. Then you have the graduated plans. Those start with a small amount and the repayment automatically goes up every 2 years, the payment amount. But before you choose this option, make sure you consider realistically whether or not your income is likely to increase substantially in the future to handle that. And then the last one is extended. And this plan stretches out how long you'll take to pay down your loans, which means significantly more interest, of course. We'll see an example of this shortly. And there's also a number of income-driven plans, which we'll also discuss shortly. So if you really want to see what your student loan payments may look like, check out www.studentloans.gov. Again, .gov is important. There's a loan simulator under the Manage Loans tab, and you can either download your actual loan data and input it in there, or you can put in estimates of what you think you'll borrow in the future. So here's an example. This student borrowed approximately $30,000. So in this case, going back to the payment plans we just talked about, the standard 10-year payment results in a higher payment of $360 a month, but it does have the least amount of interest. Now let's look at the extended. This one has a payment of $206 a month, but notice that you pay $18,000 more in interest than the 10-year plan. That's a lot of money. $18,000 is a lot of money. So if you can make it happen to make those larger payments, you're going to pay less in interest. There are several options to lower your payments based on your income and your household size. First, there's income contingent repay, or ICR, they call it. And this is the only income-driven option for the Parent Plus loan. So if that's the option you take, that's the option. For students who went to school before 2011, there's income-based repayment, or IBR. Now there's pay as you earn, was created for newer borrowers after that time period, and recently revised pay as you earn, or they call it repay. It's repay with an E on the end if you are good at acronyms. This program will make income-driven plans available to more borrowers, which is great. If you want more information on that, ibrinfo.org has some great resources explaining those options further. And also, there's even options to forgive your loans if you work for a nonprofit organization or a government agency. And again, there's that studentloans.gov website to check out for more information on that. All right. So let's say you have your student loans under control, and hopefully, I pray that you have some room for savings. I would suggest you set aside 10% or more of your earnings into savings. And here's some different saving goals to consider. I highly suggest an emergency savings. You should strive to always have 3 to 6 months of your living expenses in a separate account in the event that you lose your job. It's super unfortunate, but guys, when you have that buffer in place, it can make getting back on your feet so much easier and less stressful if something were to happen to your job. And then another thing to save for are goals. So again, we talked about those long-term and short-term goals earlier. Whatever those are, I suggest you set up, separate savings accounts to help you track your progress. Maybe now you're more focused on getting a new car. Maybe you're ready to do a down payment on a home, or maybe you go for a smaller investment like a new laptop. And then there's also retirement. And again, even though you're young, it is never too early to start saving for retirement. I don't think I can preach this quite enough in all of the areas I get to talk to members. I think I say this every time. It's never too early to start saving for retirement because that money is going to build on itself as time goes by. And time is your friend, and having money for you when you're ready to retire in the future, which may seem far away, but let me tell you, my friends, it comes faster than you think. Okay, just as important as developing a good savings habit is building good credit. Can anyone tell me why credit is important? Why is credit important? Oh no, did I put you guys to sleep with my talk about loans? Oh, good, okay. Good credit equals better rates. Yep. Anyone else? Why credit is important? Better chance of approval. Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you guys know what credit affects outside of loans? This is always an interesting thing I like to share because I don't think everyone knows about it. Do you know what credit affects that's outside of just taking out loans? You pay lower interest rate. Sometimes things have. Oh no, hold on. Oh yes, there you go. You got it. Yep. You have to have good credit for an apartment or phone. Insurance, renting, utilities. Yes, you guys got it. Perfect. Yes, you guys. This is something I don't know that everyone knows, but a lot of people just think they have to have good credit for when they want to buy a house. And that's literally all they think about, right? But your credit affects much more in your life, including your insurance rates for your car, your ability to rent an apartment, even sometimes employment. Um, I'll just tell you guys, if you work at a financial institution, they're probably going to check your credit to see if you are in a good place to be assisting others with their finances. So, yes, you guys got all of them. Well done. So credit is a way of having something now and paying for it later. So if you're a student who is applying for a credit card or loan, you may actually be required to have a co-signer who has good credit, or you might be required to prove that you have an independent source of income. And while this may sound kind of harsh and very much a roadblock, if you will, it's designed to protect you from getting into a lot of debt before you even graduate from college. And as sad as it is, there are people out there that are trying to get everyone to get multiple credit cards, to get multiple loans, to get payday loans. It is their job to market those to people, make them seem easy, make them seem great so that you have money right away. But I want you to understand these people are preying on you, and you need to know the truth before you say yes to any of those things. And so the reality is credit can be expensive if it's not used wisely. As you guys will see on the slide, if you make a large purchase on credit and only make the minimum payment each month, the actual cost of the item you purchased will end up being significantly higher than the original purchase price. So you can minimize the cost by making more than the minimum payment each month. So you guys will see there on the screen, this person one, got a loan for $1,000 at 14.99%, and they paid the minimum payment of $30 for 6 years and 10 months, and they paid 507. And the next person, again, $5,000, same rate, more than the minimum payment, and now they're paying 3,361. So It's great that you have a minimum payment and that can make sense for your budget, but I always encourage you to pay more. So if I was person number one, I would do my best to pay $50, even 60, 80 if I could. And same with the second person. If I could make even just $180 instead of 150, that's going to make a bigger difference than you realize. But here's another thing to think about is that person who spent the $5,000 noticed that their time to pay off was 14 years and 5 months. Do you think you'll actually remember that purchase once it's paid off 15 years later? Do you think you'll remember what it's for? Or chances are you probably won't even have that item any longer. So again, just reality check and things to make sure you consider. So let's talk about what happens when you apply for a loan or a credit card. So when you apply, lenders are going to be reviewing your application for credit, and they're usually going to be looking at these factors that help them to decide if you are worthy of getting a loan or not. And that is the 3 C's. The 3 C's stand, as you can see, for capacity, capital, and character. So capacity is going to look at whether you have the financial capacity to take on the credit you're seeking. Capital is going to look at what assets and resources you have so that if you need to pay back, they want to know if you have other things that you can pull from to pay off your debt. And then character is often most important to a majority of creditors because they want to know that you can handle your debt obligations and that you have handled your debt obligations at other institutions or for other creditors. And they're going to look at a credit report to determine your character. So how many of you have seen your credit report? Go ahead and raise your hand. And this is ever. Okay, so most of you, that's good. So yeah, it's important to know what's on your credit, and we'll look a little bit more in that in a second, but I want you guys to know that through the Fair Credit Reporting Act, you can obtain one copy of a credit report from each of the bureaus for free once per year. And this can be done at annualcreditreport.com. Here's the thing that's also important. It's not just having an idea of where you're at with your score or what is on your report, which is more important. It is also being able to have the opportunity to catch any fraud or identity theft, because unfortunately that is very prevalent right now. And fraudsters are getting smarter. They know how to get information. And so making sure that you don't become a victim is really important. And you can do that quickly by checking out your credit report and making sure that everything on there is actually yours. So let's say you visit the site later today, and perhaps this is the first time seeing your credit report. Let's talk about more about what that means. And you won't see a score. I just want to warn you, you won't see a score, but let's talk about what makes up a score. So a credit score is a 3-digit number that tries to quantify the likelihood of repayment. It's meant to reflect your credit risk. So are you risky to the lender? Can they count on not taking a loss because of you? Are you going to pay back your debts? What's the likelihood that you will? So people often wonder, what is a good credit score? And essentially a good credit score is a higher number that you've earned, showing that you're credit worthy and have a past of paying back debts. On the flip side, having a lower score means the risk is higher. It's harder to get approved. And when you have a low score, as we talked about a couple slides ago, you are going to pay more in interest to borrow money from these creditors. Here's a quick breakdown of how the score is calculated, just so you kind of know what's going into it. A lot of you, if you've never gotten anything before, a loan for anything, you're probably gonna have a 0 score. And that's great because that's a great place to build from. But your score is based on your payment history, the amounts owed, the length of credit history, the new credit that you get, and the types of credit. So these are things that you need to be smart with. You need to pay your bills on time. You need to not max out your credit cards. You need to have patience with that length of credit history. It will build as you continue to make good choices. Don't apply for too many credit cards or credit lines too often. That shows that you're risky and you're shopping for money. And lastly, when it comes to the new types of credit and the types of credit, it's really a mix of the loans that you have. So you want to have more, you want to have a good mix, but you don't want to do too much. So it's really a balance, and you will learn more and more about that as you take out more loans and as you work on your score. Here's something though that you can know is income and employment income, employment, where you live, your race, age, gender, religion, national origin, marital status. None of those are considered in determining your credit score. It's only the things listed here. It's pretty much based on your choices. So make good choices, okay? So the easiest way to start or boost your credit score when applying for a card, or is to apply for a card, excuse me, because it is a quick way to get approved, to make good choices, again, that will build your credit. So here's a couple tips with that, is make sure you have stable income, because a credit card can easily become a crutch that you rely on if you don't have the money you need for living. Keep in mind, you can always outspend any income if you're not careful. Credit cards make it really easy to afford unrealistic lifestyles. So keep in touch with that budget that we talked about earlier. And then lastly, even with secured credit cards, it's important to have money in the savings as a backup, again, for any of those emergencies. If you have no savings and a financial emergency happens, you might turn to your credit card and get trapped in a cycle of debt, which is the last thing we want you to do. Okay, let's review some tips for using a credit card wisely, okay? Again, have money in savings as a backup so you can handle those unexpected expenses. Consider only making one charge per month. Maybe make it an automatic bill such as internet or cell phone. Setting up automatically ensures that you will not succumb to temptation when it comes to overspending. The lower the utilization, the better. General rule of thumb is less than 1/3 of your available credit. So do that calculation when you get your approved limit, and then only spend up to 1/3 of that, okay? While you're paying off an account in full, it doesn't actually improve your credit score per se. It's actually paying each month that really matters, and paying on time. So keep making those payments. And if you can pay it off, you're going to avoid paying interest, which will help as well. And then lastly, again, I'm going to preach to the choir, right? Check your credit report regularly for accuracy. All right. As we're wrapping up here, I want to just say, if you guys follow these steps we've discussed, you'll have excellent credit, you'll have minimal debt, you'll have a solid budget and substantial savings. And this really is such an exciting time in your life, or in the life of our graduates, that we know. And there's a lot of decisions to make. And while you're still young, it's important to look at each step as an opportunity to really learn about personal finance and for you to grow and learn. The lessons learned now will set you up for a lifetime of success. I promise you that. I want to take a moment to share about a resource that we offer free to our members, and that is GreenPath Financial Wellness. We partner with them to provide our members with direct person-to-person financial counseling and guidance. And if you feel like you want to really get a solid grasp on your finances before heading into adulthood, make sure you get in touch with GreenPath and see how they can help set you up for success. All right, we're almost to the end of our time today. I do want to thank you guys so much for coming this afternoon. I know there was a lot of information. There's some tips and tricks and some advice that I really hope was helpful to you. If you wouldn't mind sharing, I'd love to see your key takeaway from this webinar, something that you learned, something you want to take away, something that really reminded you of something that's important to you. And you can go ahead and put that in the chat. And of course, this is time for questions as well, if you guys have any. I can tell you guys while you're typing that I truly wish that I would have gotten this education back when I was graduating from high school. No one took the time to teach me these things. I think it's just because my parents didn't have the knowledge or the education to share this with me, and that is to no fault of their own. But just kind of a reminder of how important it is that we share this information with those that need it, especially those high school graduates that are really just starting to step into adulthood, and they have a lot of decisions to make and a lot of hard decisions. So again, my heart is to always be serving those that might not be getting it elsewhere. So as we send out the recording, please be sure to share it with others, or even share what you've learned today with those that may benefit from it. I don't see any key takeaways or questions. Hopefully you guys got something out of this. I'm afraid that maybe you didn't. I hope. I mean, there was a lot of information. Someone got something, right? Takeaway. Don't get hung up on small day-to-day purchases. Remember to begin with the end. That I want in mind. That is great information. That's a great point. Yes. And it's hard too to be stuck. It is all a balance, right? Balancing what you want now with what you want in the future. And you have to make choices every day about that. So good point. It was very informative. It was really great. Okay, thanks, guys. All right. Well, on that note, we are at time. So I'm going to encourage you guys to take the survey that will pop up after I end this session. If you give your feedback, you'll be entered into a $25 gift card drawing. And I will make sure to send out, like I said, this recording and the winner in the follow-up email. Again, just please share this with anyone that would benefit from it, especially the younger folks who might just be graduating, or maybe they're in the middle of college, or maybe they're just getting out of college. I hope this will be beneficial to everyone and get everyone on the right foot. So thank you guys so much for joining me. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope I see you guys at our next webinar.